And we're back. Welcome back.
Yes, sir.
Season 2, talking about fear, the things that scare us. What have I been so afraid of? You know, all those types of questions. Everybody talk, because we just had Halloween and talk about fear and those types of things, scary moments, scary things. And, we sat down and as we sat down trying to talk about what we wanted to kind of discuss this season with fear, we broke it down into different components and we thought that anxiety was the best kind of launching point after we kind of, set the tone for this season with fear. Because, in my opinion, anxiety is the physical manifestation of fear in our life. Like anxiety is almost that ultimate point of being frozen by fear, letting fear decide my fate in those moments of anxiety. And also because you specifically have been experiencing anxiety probably in the most palpable way in your entire life so far, and it's just more recently become stronger and stronger.
Well, I would say over a more extended period of time. Like throughout my life, there were like when I was a little bit younger, I had little pockets or moments of anxiety, but it never. We're probably about 6 months into, more anxiety episodes, attacks.
Yeah, more. They're happening more frequently.
They're happening frequently. Multiple times a week. I can't remember the last week I didn't have one. You know what I mean? Over the last 6 months for sure. So
and I think also they're showing up in different as a result of different things. It used to be like maybe when you were doing this or maybe when you hadn't done certain things or whatever you would experience, but now it seems like it's permeated even further.
Sure. When I first experienced, I had like a food allergy in like middle school and high school, early high school, and I had like a moment where I was having a really bad reaction, and there were some like physical responses of my body. And I remember feeling anxiety in that moment, but only like for a brief moment. Obviously, my parents were there, medical advice, everything like that. So all was cool. It was just a bad allergic reaction, but I remember feeling little moments of that anxiety, and then the biggest and then the next longest stint was like the robbery.
Right.
In college or whatever.
The robberies.
Well, the first one was pretty chill for being a robbery. Like they were just like, we're here to take the money. You ain't gonna get hurt. I was like, cool. They were hitting the head of the guy who was trying to remember the safe combination. So I was like, you might not want to do that.
Right.
So he can remember it and get you what you want.
The second one was much worse.
But the second one, definitely. It was, there's so many layers to that. And that was probably only like a few weeks, a couple months. It hasn't been an extended like a 6 month thing. And that was just
as far as experiencing anxiety, it was like still
having
only
multiple attacks. It was still like, because you know how it goes. I was working at University of South Carolina football team. I didn't have classes on Thursdays, and we had a game that Thursday. I had been working at a movie theater. I had just quit because I was working football, and we watched movies before they came out. So it was a random Wednesday night. For some reason, my sophomore year fall semester, I didn't have Thursday classes. I don't know what I was doing when I was making my schedule up until my junior year, like spring semester. I didn't realize. Anyways, but so I went to go watch the movie with my friends, knowing like, hey, all I got to do is show up at the stadium at like 3 the next day because we played like at 7 or 8. But I go through that. Mike was there, and ended up getting robbed by 3 guys at gunpoint. They ended up getting Pat and his girl. Like it was a whole situation, and Pat had a gun on him, and then his gun went off. So like it was nuts, and like he was really beat up. I was just frozen still once that gunshot went off, and I remember being scared, pretty much of being alone and in the dark for the next little bit. And so I go to the game the next day. I'm kind of in a fog, whatever, and then I have to go and tell one of the assistant athletic trainer. And he almost kind of started laughing. He was like, bro, I don't mean to laugh. He goes, but that shit sounds like it was a movie, Yeah. And so long story short.
At a movie theater.
Well, yeah, it wasn't a movie theater. But, long story short, they hooked me up with some like therapy. I got to go see somebody and like talk about it. And then they prescribed some, the assortment of medications that could be, I could help, people through these situations. And I remember having, just bad dreams and fear. I would literally leave football practice and drive all the way to the other side of town,
just so that you didn't
I didn't have to ride home and be home alone. So and you were at PC at that time, and so that was the whole thing. And there were moments.
Do you think that's where it's all rooted? Do you think like that those moments, those two robberies, is kind of where even the anxiety that you're experiencing now is almost rooted?
I would say yes, in terms of
It opens you up to the
I felt that was the closest I've ever been to death.
right. Okay.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, this is the moment, like, oh, once that gun went off, I was like, my life is ending tonight. I mean, I started thinking about everything, people in my life, like where I could have done better, all this kind of stuff. I'm 20, 19,
Yeah,
somewhere like that. So like, I'm just like, oh my gosh, you know, and then, you know, became thankful. Unfortunately, you know, it ruined relationships. Like, you know, I mean, Pat and I were close, and I haven't seen that man in years. But you know, I was having to deal with my thing. I couldn't go to a movie
Yeah.
forever until, you know, Mike and his dad, just thank you for them, were like, we're going to a movie today, dude. You know, and it wasn't like early on. There was a whole process of getting better with it. You know, I mean,
But that's some real fear right there.
It was.
I mean,
It-
that's
it
like
was-
a legitimate moment where like fear was present. And
yeah.
again, I don't think it's necessarily wrong to feel the fear or to
Right.
be afraid. I think when, you know, aside from the moments where like it could be the end and those types of things. And for me personally, I'm cool with where I'm at. So like I've come to being, I've accepted that death is going to come, and I'm cool
Sure,
whenever
it's
that
still
moment
hard in
comes.
those moments,
So,
though.
yeah, and to be honest, I've never really I mean, I've had a couple of encounters with some poisonous snakes, and like when I was in Sri Lanka, and that was a little like oh, you know.
That's more rooted than your snake fear, though.
Yeah, I don't like snakes. I've gotten better at it, but I just don't generally. I don't like snakes. But the anxiety, almost, you having those real moments of anxiety have now caused you to give it more space, maybe.
Well, what I had to be mindful of is don't use this experience to judge every other thing. Like, and that's what I was scared of.
That's a good point.
I was like, oh no, every time I go out at night, something bad's going to happen.
Right.
So I had to. That
I
was
don't
the
want to
first
go.
hurdle.
So I don't want to go out.
I don't want to go out, but I don't want to go out alone.
Yeah.
And I generally, actually, no, I didn't go out anywhere.
No.
I literally was home. I was living at home at the time, and my parents were there. So like, I wanted to be with them. I felt safest with them, and I'm thankful that I had parents that provided just a childhood to a young adulthood to even to now of just a safety feeling when I'm with them.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was big for that moment. And I'm thankful to I was in a program and working with a football team who had people who cared for me that created a support system.
I think that's important too.
I mean, and it was nuts because I wasn't going to tell the assistant athletic trainer that day, but I told one of my friends because I had to tell somebody, and she was like, I'm telling him, like, bye. You need, like, people need to know about this. You need, like, this. And, you know, a couple weeks went by. We ended up playing Alabama that year. We won. It was sick. It was like an amazing, you know, experience. And I remember that night, you and Josh were like, yo, we're going to go hang out with some friends. We're not going anywhere crazy. We're going to go hang out with some friends after this.
Right.
You know, we're going to go there. You're going to go out tonight. You're going to push past this fear. And so that was one of the moments with Mr. Henschel and Mike, when we went to the movie theater. That was another moment where I started to push past and I'm existing in life again. I'm going about it in a different way.
So now when you experience these moments, because now it's like a different thing, right?
Sure.
Like you feel like your throat's closing up.
Yeah.
It's like a physical.
Still a similar, like, I feel like I'm close to death.
Right.
But now there's no guns. There's no actual
Right.
event happening except for internal feels or whatever.
feel like I'm dying.
After talking with some friends at lunch, they were like, and even Mike mentioned, I wonder what stuff is out there about anxiety in the throat. And so I started to do a little bit of research and stuff and realized that it's probably now boiling down to a lack of communication in certain areas of my life. I feel like I need to, like, maybe I subconsciously or whatever, feel like I need to say something, but I'm not. And so I'm feeling this physical thing because maybe you're in moments where you're not communicating effectively or how you can communicate better.
authentically.
Right.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
from the first experience with the robberies or with the second robbery and everything like that, I gained through that experience, through the support with my friends and the growth from that, like a 360-degree awareness. Like, I know what's going on around me because of that fear, I developed what's happening. Like, is something coming?
Right.
But that turned into, and that ended up being one of my biggest strengths in terms of working with kids,
Yeah.
making sure they're safe. In terms of when we traveled out of the country and I had to help lead teams, you know, mission teams and stuff, that was big because I was responsible for more people at that point. I worked at a camp. I had to, you know, be in charge of some kids one week.
Yeah. So the moments of fear
Mm-hmm.
where maybe
And the anxiety
they also cause the anxiety, and these battles with anxiety are almost just made them stronger or more palpable. Those actually provided you even greater opportunities for growth and learning. And now you even though you're still having to navigate episodes and instances of anxiety, those moments back in the past of anxiety allowed you to have now new skills, new experiences in life, a new perspective and lens to even operate through.
Right. I think I'm trying to remind myself as I'm going through here, and especially, and now I'm no professional. I don't really know. I've read a couple things. If it does have to do with my communication, I'm trying to remind myself when I'm in those things is like, how can we get better at communicating? Because if I come out of this experience better at communicating with people, that's awesome.
Right.
Like I need that.
I also think it's giving you a space in that moment to better communicate with yourself, what you're experiencing. So it's almost like how you expect yourself to communicate well with other people if you're not even telling yourself what you need to be telling yourself. And it's not to say that you're not.
Sure.
I think because I've been on the other side of that. I've been on the other side when you call me and you're experiencing these things, or you're texting me and you're experiencing these things. And like the things that continue to just kind of roll around in my soul or like internally, it's just like, man, give yourself grace and breathe.
You remind me about that because I tend to beat myself up of like, why am I having
these? I'm so sorry that I'm reaching out to you in this. And it's like, whoa, man, hold up. Aside from all that stuff, you're still experiencing this. So let's allow yourself the space to get through this, to navigate it, to put your feet on the ground and still feel your humanity, your humanity there. Because the anxiety in that moment is trying to devalue you.
Right. Well, I think the craziest,
it doesn't dictate your value.
Right. I think what makes this even more interesting is like, I'm in a season of life now where I'm doing something that I know absolutely fills up my cup that I absolutely love. With, coaching football.
Right.
That and spending time with these kids. But I'm finding myself when I'm in my most joyful place, when I'm in a place that's filling up my cup, I'm having anxiety attacks constantly. I'm talking at practice, before games, before I go on like it's crazy how often I'm in a moment where I'm at the thing that is fulfilling my life to an extent at this point. And yet, I'm having this moment of just pure anxiety where I'm convincing myself something bad is going to happen. And it's wild to me because, and it's funny, The Alchemist was constantly referenced in the first, but you remind me it's because you're on the right path, right?
I'm choosing to believe that.
And so you tell me that. And so even
I'm framing your struggle with this that way.
Well, I appreciate that.
Because I think how we frame it is key. And we've talked about perspective in the last season and things like that.
That just resonated with me.
But it is. It's for you. I find that, so we said in the first episode, when we level up, the boss gets bigger, right? All right. So when we start taking ownership of our life, when we start doing the things that fill our cup up, it's almost as if the survival nature of our makeup is trying to remind us, hey, but you still have to survive. So you're stepping into fear. Don't do that. This is comfortable back here. It's almost as if we're having to combat the physical structure that's there with what our soul actually wants. Because we've said in the first episode, like, I believe that everything I've ever wanted out of life is on the other side of my fear. And so when you're on that path, when you're starting to take those steps and the things that you want to do, it's almost as if the yang in life, the yin and yang, whichever the negative part is, because I'm not quite sure what it is, whichever the negative part is that's coming out, the evil that's out there is going to try to derail you from that, because ultimately something is out there that's trying to stop you from thriving in this life.
And I believe in that. I operate in the good and evil. We
talked about that.
But
I choose to believe that they're coming at you, and they're coming at you hard and frequent because you're doing the things you want to do. It's giving you no choice but to learn how to navigate this.
Well, and see, that's what I try to remind myself is like, hey man, if this is something you're going to deal with, you've got to figure out how to operate within it and still. And what's crazy?
What about the moments where nobody's there when you call or text? What happens when you have that moment and you have to get through it?
Yeah, exactly. I break it down to breath. I remind myself where I'm at, and then I start to just be present. I try to remind myself to be present. And that's something that you've told me even every time I reach out with you. Because, like, man, if I drop dead on a football field, that's about as good as a day could get. We're on the golf course with friends. I'm having an anxiety attack. And you're like, bro, you could... If you
this
went
is how
out
you
right
went out
now,
playing golf with Trav and Nicole?
You went out with your friends playing golf.
Come on.
Like, I mean, for me, that's where it's at. It's like, okay... you're filling up your cup. But then, okay, so I brought up The Alchemist just even to say, because it talks about personal legend and like talks about a journey. Like it's an amazing book. If you haven't read it, read it. I'm serious.
Definitely.
But he talks about the closer one person is to like realizing their personal legend, like the attacks, the boss gets bigger, the fear is bigger. You become more scared to accomplish it.
In season 1, you mentioned the quote from The Alchemist where it's like, when you're hungry, you're more susceptible to food.
That's not from The Alchemist. I don't think that's from The Alchemist.
My
I think
bad.
That's just a quote.
All right. Well, what's the quote? Like you're more susceptible.
Yeah, the hungrier you are, the more susceptible, or the more clear your mind is, but the more like susceptible you are to smell.
So take that and kind of transpose it into this like ownership pathway.
Mm-hmm.
The more that you're trying to take ownership in your life and you keep your focus in the right spot, the more opportunities for you to be distracted away from that ownership or that pathway or stepping into that fear you're going to get. I promise you, the moment you start to step into fear, the moment you start to step into anxiety, it's going to ratchet itself up because those things want to exist. They want that space in your life.
Sure.
And I'm not trying to diminish or devalue the experience because, bro, I've seen you in these moments. Like, you're physically, you have to lay down. You have to give yourself, your body doesn't want to operate in those things.
Throw cold water on my face.
Whatever you got to do to get through it.
A bunch of different things.
But the reality of it is your soul is still there in the midst of experiencing all of that. And so it's almost like this, and I know that sounds super heady, and I'm not trying to sound super heady with it because I do believe life is so like deep and interconnected, but it's almost as if you're going to have to start being intentional with, as soon as I start feeling that, hey man, you're experiencing this. Like the grace has to be like the
accepting
reflex.
it, but also diving into it and be like, hey, why are you feeling this?
Exactly. Asking it the questions.
And figuring out, because my friends telling me, hey, and Mike saying it could be the lack of communication, feeling like you need to say something. Okay, if that's the case, dive into that more. Unpack that more for yourself, And what's funny is I'm sure the guys at football have no idea. I try to
like even the coaches, like the other coaches?
Oh, I haven't told any of the coaches. John would be the only one I would tell.
Right.
I would be like, but no, when I'm at work, like, Ronnie, Donnie, pulled them to the side, Miss Angie, like straight up. And then, like those are people I go to. And then I have other people in my life that I go to as well, just when I'm outside of that work setting, right? But sometimes it's proximity. I'm having this moment. I need somebody.
I don't mean to laugh.
No. It's fine. Listen, it's cool. It's a process. It's learning for me. And so I try not to frame it as, and it's like you said, give yourself grace, but don't frame it like this is something that's going to be incredible for my life. Overcoming this, going through this is going to impact me. And I don't necessarily see it.
Right.
But I know it's going to impact me in some way, like the fear from the robbery, creating the awareness around me.
Right.
I am able to understand, like that was implemented in an amazing way and radically changed my life in terms of spending time with young people and making sure that they're okay, because we live in a world that's crazy and there are things that could happen and there is
dangerous and
there
scary
is danger,
and there's evil. We said it.
But still, even in that, I mean, physical sensations even come on. Like I feel like I'm choking. My palms are sweating. Like it's crazy.
Sweaty palms.
When and I'm not even really that scared of flying anymore because it's taking me somewhere. I put my hands up. I'm always like this. I'm always like this. So I'm like, somebody's looking at me like, what is this fool doing? I tell people when I would fly by myself or without any of y'all, and I'd be sitting next to somebody random, be like, hey, I'm just gonna let you know I'm gonna be doing this. So what's funny is I've learned that I'm very much like, I'm in the middle of an anxiety attack. I just want to let you know that you're in proximity.
That's actually a cool aspect of it. That you're at this point now where you're okay with letting people in and recognizing the fact how important it is to have people around you.
Right. And just being thankful that I have people,
especially not everybody has that.
In my job, in my outside of job life, in my coaching. Now coaching, I haven't dove into any of that, but like just with you guys, you're being available and I'm thankful for you. And that's just one of the great things about being a twin. And
yeah, it's a unique aspect of our relationship.
Like you're pretty much always there.
Pretty much
always there, always responding. So I'm thankful for it. It
sounds like I need to fill my time up more. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
It's ongoing, man. Like, and I'm thankful. And I try to remind myself even in these moments. So like, it's gotten better over these 6 months. There's definitely been ups and downs in terms of like.
But again, I believe that it is your anxiety is forcing you to grow from this. Your anxiety is forcing you to say, hey, whatever this thing is, because it's all connected, right? The sensation in your throat if it has to do with communication and this, because one of the things, I just hit this thing, but whatever. One of the things that gives me some of the most anxiety is actually being my authentic self in a moment, because I know that I'm going to ruffle some feathers when I actually gain the confidence to speak the things that that are stirring in my soul. Not that I'm right, but I've got to share what I'm seeing.
Hey, this is making me feel a certain type of way.
And communicating in that way. But like, again, why does the anxiety show up in the moments of greatest growth, the moments of opportunities for greatest growth?
Because they want to hold you back.
It wants to hold you back.
Ledge, like it's we were talking about.
It's the ledge.
You don't want to go.
Them palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms heavy. You know the whole thing.
Marshall Mathers.
Yeah, but it is like my mouth gets dry and I gotta pee. Like that's like my anxiety thing. Like, bro, before I went to speak before that committee too, bro, I was just like, or like speak before anything. One time when Dad didn't speak on Sunday morning, they asked me to speak, bro, I went pee like 10 minutes before the service started, and right before I went up, I was like, man, I gotta pee. Like, it's just like one of those things. But anyways, it's just a side note. But
you have physical sensations.
Your body responds to these things that your mind, these emotions that are internally in you that you experience, and you've grown already, even though you're still experiencing the anxiety. And I think you have to give yourself. It's building those altars, those pillars, those things to remind you of the past that you've overcome, the growth that you've seen, because again, you're on the other side of this fear, even though you're still kind of in the midst of it.
Sure.
Because there have been moments of anxiety that you've already.
It's almost like it's a hurricane. I went through a wave. I'm kind of in the eye. I'm about to maybe go through another wave, but eventually I'll be on that other side.
Clear skies.
Right.
There's I think it's the song "Lost" or something off of one of Emineo's EPs, but it talks about like he's about to take off and like it's like crazy turbulence, and it's like. But when I get above those clouds, like it's like it never happened. It's a completely different day. Now that goes back into it just takes time and patience and consistency and those things that we've talked about. But the first step to even overcoming this anxiety is giving yourself the space to experience it and giving yourself the space to not lose value over it.
And I'm working on it.
And you're working on it. And I'm so proud of you for even being willing to talk about that, but also just giving yourself the space to know that, hey, I learned something before from this. I'm going to give myself the opportunity to learn something here.
I'm going to be present to learn,
It's going to take time.
Yes, sir.
It's going to be about having people with you. I don't think this is a battle that you have to do alone, or I have to do alone, or anybody has to do alone. And we know it's never going to be a straight line.
No way, man. Always crooked.
It's always crooked.